I've given this some thought for the past couple of hours, and I have to say that I strongly believe that the Supreme Court has just opened up a clear and certain path for this country to enter into a phase of violent civil war. And the reason I say that is because the Supreme Court has declined to review 10 Second Amendment cases. 10, if I'm saying that correctly. So out of 10 cases, they couldn't find anything to address. And they're going to leave the battle for gun rights versus gun control up in the air. As far as I'm concerned, that delegitimizes the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court now has no legitimacy. And you know why that's a problem? And you know why I'm saying that's going to open up the country to civil war? Aside from, the COVID-19 and the civil unrest, which the civil unrest is going to continue to linger, arguments about police brutality, and then the racial divide in America. But the reason I say it's going to open up the country to civil war is because now we have three ineffective branches of government. There is no checks and balances. Regardless of whether you want to agree with, Donald Trump or not. Donald Trump thinks that he's King Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just ripping up the Constitution. You see this within the manner in which he governs. You see this within the manner in which, example was this, the Flynn guy, who he wants to pardon. People underneath him are being charged with crimes, and he threatens to immediately pardon them. Okay, so that's the executive branch. Then you have the legislative branch, which, everybody's known for a very long time has an inability to get anything done. And there's too much partisanship in the legislative branch of government to effectively get anything done. And now you have the judicial branch, which is the courts, that the highest court in the land has failed to do its job in addressing discrepancies and what's the other word that I'm looking for? I'll just go with discrepancies. Addressing discrepancies in the law. So now we continue with a landscape as it pertains to gun rights and gun control that is all over the place. We have states that are shall issue, which is the majority of states in the United States. And then we have states that are may issue. States like New York, New Jersey, Maryland, California. And these are states that believe that you have to have justifiable need in order to carry a firearm outside of the home, which is a burden that is so high to reach, again, determined by the state if it pleases the crown, that effectively it is a de facto ban on concealed carry. Nobody in New Jersey is able to conceal carry except for retired law enforcement and with, these super exceptions that, are only granted the ability to carry concealed with extreme prejudice. And we saw this with the security guard who not too long ago, I don't know, I did a video on him. I can't believe I forget what his name was. What was his name? The Twine guy. He was a black security guard who was pulled over by a New Jersey police officer, and he had a New Jersey permit. He had a permit, and they tried to charge him with unlawful possession of a weapon and hollow points. And he had the specific hollow points that in New Jersey the state troopers have deemed not to be, a hollow point. There's exceptions. Now in New Jersey, just so everybody understands, you can possess hollow points for your own personal defense in your home. You can buy any number of hollow points. No group of hollow points are deemed illegal in the state of New Jersey. It's just the issue is it's one of those tack on charges, right? So if you get caught committing a crime, outside of your home, then they will, if you're found to possess hollow points, then they will tack on hollow points as an additional charge. So this is just one of those, trying to bury you and just, throw the book at you with, technicalities that will just, give you more prison time. So the other thing is now you have the lower courts, the appellate courts that are all over the place in terms of their interpretation of the Heller and McDonald. Because obviously more liberal courts say that these, restrictions are perfectly okay. And then you have other courts that say these restrictions are a clear violation. And so here you have the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, that has failed to do their job. Their job is to provide guidance and clarification on the laws and reel the courts in so that, there is a clear understanding of the reading of the Constitution. That is why these Supreme Court justices have been given their position. And on the Second Amendment, as Clarence Thomas has pointed out numerous times, the court treats the Second Amendment like it's a bastard child. It is the pariah of all rights. And I think at a time where people are buying, more guns because they have a lack of confidence in the government's ability to protect them, that this sends just an awful message. An awful message that will open up America to civil war. I give the Supreme Court a vote of no confidence. No confidence. And once the masses of people look at the Supreme Court, as an institution that has no validity because it fails to do its job, I'm like you're opening yourself up to civil war. I mean, there's no other way. I got three branches of ineffective government, three branches of ineffective leadership. I suggest people go and read the preamble of the Declaration of Independence and what it says in there about it being American citizens' duty, to overthrow the government if there's the burden of tyranny is too high. Now, I'm just saying that this is one of the domino pieces in America just falling into civil war. I go and I watch the ultra right leaning conservative YouTube channels, and I hear their grumblings. And this country is deeply divided. And there's a lot of hypocrisy in there. Don't get me wrong. I've voiced my opinion about, a lot of the Second Amendment crowd, they can go and, march on the Michigan Capitol when it comes to getting a haircut or opening up the country. But then when you have real tyranny and you have a citizen who is snuffed out in front of, cameras, and these Second Amendment people are nowhere to be seen. So, I may be wrong in my assessment, and, the government can call the people's bluff and just say that the American people are a bunch of cowards. But, I already know that there's people that are out there that, they take the shit very seriously. People like James Yeager come to mind with his Pack Your Bags video that got him investigated, by the way, and lost him his Tennessee carry conceal license, which, because he's a white man, was quickly reinstated. But I mean, now we have this is the part that demonstrates. I mean, this is disastrous for the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. We now have just total confusion as it pertains to concealed carry laws. You had Chicago that had an all-out ban. I think it was a handgun ban. They got the statue that's a revolver with the barrel twisted in a knot, right? And the Supreme Court forced Chicago and Illinois to recognize concealed carry. So not only were they forced to lift their handgun ban, but they were also forced to recognize concealed carry. Then you have D.C., which had a similar ban, a complete handgun ban, and they were also forced to recognize concealed carry. What makes New Jersey any different? What makes New York any different? What makes Maryland any different? What makes California any different? Why? So here you have this huge discrepancy where they force Chicago, they force DC, but then leave New Jersey and New York up in the air. And again, this furthers the illegitimacy, because the states that I named pretty much are some of the states, if not the states, with the highest tax contribution in the U.S. These are wealthy states. Okay, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, California. These are wealthy states. And so I wonder how much of that Bloomberg money might be influencing the Supreme Court. I mean, hell, you had New York who threatened the Supreme Court with reorganization of the Supreme Court. Again, where's the checks and balances? The Supreme Court has literally flushed its legitimacy down the toilet. So what's left? The executive branch is Looney Tune bin. The Supreme Court is ineffective, and the legislative branch is ineffective. I mean, you had the New York case where they basically had a law, an ordinance law, and it was blatant. Even many of the justices on the Supreme Court recognized, as I believe Kavanaugh said, I don't know if it was Kavanaugh or Alito, but one of them talked about, a Herculean effort to basically dodge constitutional review by the Supreme Court. And what they did, what New York had, is New York had an ordinance that basically said that you can't transport your firearms outside of the city of New York. And you couldn't take your firearm that you own and legally possess, which is already difficult to get in the city of New York. You couldn't transport that firearm to a second location. right? It was New York issues premises permits, which basically say that your gun is tied to a particular location if you don't have a concealed carry permit, which again, New York does not give out unless you're very powerful or unless you're an individual like Donald Trump. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the mentality and temperament of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has a New York concealed carry license. I want you to think about that. Donald Trump has a New York carry concealed license. Is Donald Trump the type of person that you would want to be around who has a concealed firearm? But Donald Trump has it. See, they're demonstrating how much America is a plutocracy and it's not a democracy. And that right there, in my opinion, opens up this country for civil war in the worst way, aside from all the other stuff going on in the background between Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the issues on police brutality, the COVID-19 and all the white rural people getting agitated, the attacks on the Second Amendment that already have the white people, agitated. And I say the white people because they're the biggest supporters of the Second Amendment, despite how much I try to get African Americans to support the Second Amendment. And so the Supreme Court, as I have stated before in videos I've done before, has allowed itself to be manipulated by the city of New York. This is the equivalent of, this is like somebody murdering their wife and then going to the court and saying, Your Honor, you can't charge me with murder because I didn't murder my wife. What I did was I caused her to cease to exist. And then the court's like, okay, that sounds legit. Case dismissed. And that's literally what New York did. And that's literally what these liberal states continue to do, which is find a way around constitutional review, but effectively denying people access to their Second Amendment rights by saying, oh, in the state of New Jersey, there is a path to getting your concealed carry license, but we make it as onerous and arduous as possible, and we essentially make it so that you can't get a permit. It's virtually impossible for the everyday citizen to get a permit. Not to mention the fact that even with just to demonstrate how much of a burden it is and how much of a barrier and how impossible it is to get a concealed carry permit in New Jersey, Governor Murphy planned and attempted to increase the fees on permits to purchase a handgun and the fee for getting a license. He wanted to increase it substantially, like into the several hundreds of dollars, right? Which right off top, as an African American, there's racism built into that because you can't, it's class and race are inextricably tied together in America. And so what has effectively been done is, if you want to deny black people access to firearms, all you got to do, which is, again, you got to recognize the long-standing history of gun control and how much it's tied to racism in this country. And so what they have done is basically said, okay, well, we can't deny black people on the grounds of race. So what we'll do is we recognize that they're a poorer population and we will price them out of the market. We will make it so expensive that only elite white men can have firearms and exercise their Second Amendment rights. Okay, it's just like with machine guns. Machine guns are just restricted, right? They're not banned, they're restricted. And so the only people who have machine guns in America are wealthy white men who can afford $20,000 and $30,000 firearms, for their quote unquote gun collections. So again, the laws have been tailored in a fashion and in a manner in which Only elite white males are able to exercise these rights, which basically now become a privilege of elite white males. Again, the racism is baked into it. So, I look at all this and I say to myself, wow, wow, that the Supreme Court has allowed, I really thought that, with Kavanaugh citing, and again, he's the only one that is very vocal about this. And Kavanaugh, he came on board and, he said, okay, I'll concede that the case in New York is moot. We recognize how the city of New York has attempted to manipulate, not only threaten the court, but manipulate the court. And they essentially got away with it, right? Like they literally, saw that the Supreme Court was going to review their gun case and that it might change the landscape of guns across the nation nationally. And they said, oh shit, we got to change the law real quick. And they changed it. I mean, could you imagine that being done with any other right? Where you get one particular party that just continues to violate people's rights. And then at the last minute, they change the law right before it goes up for constitutional review so that it doesn't change nationally. All this has done, and all this will continue to do, is further violations of the Second Amendment, egregious violations of the Second Amendment against, the people. Because now, they already had the confidence before that the Supreme Court had no appetite for Second Amendment cases. So now they're going to be further emboldened to further push the envelope. Maybe not now, not immediately, but further down the road. They will push the envelope of Second Amendment violations because, hey, I can pass all the unconstitutional laws in the world as the state of New Jersey, and I have no fear of constitutional review by the Supreme Court. And so I'll just pass these ridiculous unconstitutional laws. And, then if the Supreme Court decides it's going to look at it, I will just narrowly change this law. The most narrow scope possible. I will narrowly change this law. And that way I will avoid constitutional review, and all of, myself and the other liberal, states will be able to maintain our democratic liberal enclaves of Second Amendment violations. The only thing left to do at this point is to move out of these states if you value your Second Amendment rights. That's the only thing left to do. Because the Supreme Court has shown itself to be inept. It's only a matter of time until people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. It's only a matter of time. Eventually, I'm pretty sure, as the future unfolds, more things are going to happen that are going to piss people off, and you will, get to a tipping point in this country, which obviously is something that Russia and China and Iran would absolutely adore, including North Korea. But in my opinion, the stage has been set. So it's just a powder keg waiting to explode. And, again, as an African American, where are we going to fall? You're talking about, a lot of these people that, I would agree with constitutionally on the Second Amendment, they have a lot of negative biases towards African Americans. They don't think of us in terms of, being fellow Americans and card carrying Second Amendment. No, they think of Ray Ray and Pookie and the thugs and the looters and, They have this idea that they're going to go out there and, shoot black people and, get rid of us and, Candace Owens, the African American community to death. And, black people will know their place and stay in their place and exist in continued conditions of extreme poverty and abject poverty and, take us back to the 1950s and that's what it'll be, and go back to American apartheid, and that's what it'll be. I'm telling you, these people that I would agree with on the Second Amendment, a lot of them are fucked up. So if something were to go down, I'm like, that's not going to be good for anybody. Even the black people who say, well, we're not involved in that, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And again, I am not one that particularly trusts the federal government. I am not one that particularly trusts my fellow white Americans based on the context of the history, the track record that white people have towards the African American community. So I am the first one to stand up and say, oh no, I definitely want to be able to protect myself. So, that much of the conservative ideology I strongly support. But that's pretty much about it. And there might be some other slight minor things. But again, it still puts me in a very awkward, odd, and uncomfortable position when dealing with, white conservatives on this Second Amendment issue. As far as I'm concerned, we are alone, and our needs and interests are considerably different than, our white American brethren. And that's something that I don't think enough black people take into consideration, when speaking on the Second Amendment, because they don't want to go out there and vote for the same party that they feel is bigoted and racist. Or the party that harbors large amounts of bigots and racists. But I'm saying that's where we are. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But I don't really see any other option other than black people who value their Second Amendment rights, especially with all the shit that's going on. If you want to be able to protect, there's people right now, the people who live in New York, they cannot protect themselves. They cannot stand out there like some of these other people in other states like Georgia and stand in front of their store with a firearm to be able to protect it. They can't do it. There is no open carry. There is no concealed carry. There's no carry. They can't even obtain the weapons because they have all these extra super duper, permit processes that they have to go through, which is cost prohibitive, especially for African Americans. All of these laws were originally designed to keep guns out of the hands of black people. That's a fact. That's historical fact. Any number of scholars can tell you about the racist origins of gun control. There's plenty of videos on YouTube that can tell you about the racist origins of gun control. And yet somehow, some way, this doesn't bubble to the surface. So, and perhaps that needs to be the next constitutional challenge. But right now, I've talked to people who have told me, even to get these cases to the Supreme Court, for them to even look, it took, tens of millions of dollars to get them to look at it and just dismiss it and say, no, we're not going to look at it. We're not even going to check it out. Even though that's their job. Again, a vote of no confidence. A vote of no confidence. I don't know what's left other than civil war when you have an ineffective executive branch, an ineffective legislative branch, and an ineffective judicial branch. It's like, get your water, get your supplies and hunker down because, The coming years, I don't think are going to be particularly too pretty. I think you're going to see more marches and more protests of especially a lot of Second Amendment people when these Democrats come through and they start pushing their gun control legislation, like what you see in Virginia. And currently right now the Virginians, especially in those they are step by step removing Democratic legislators. They're removing them. They don't play. I've already said that white people do not play when it comes to their Second Amendment. They don't play. The white people that you see that are on MSNBC and see, they're like the you know the urban metropolitan area soccer moms and stuff like that. But the other people, the rest of those other white folks, they don't play that, and they do not play that shit. They don't play with their Second Amendment. So again, whenever they decide to muster up enough courage, I'm like, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly, and that's just the facts of it. I mean, I look at the whole situation. I'm like, you're not going to disarm these people. You're not going to remove their guns. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to put the genie back in the bottle and say, assault weapons are banned, and you already got, freaking 15, 20 million assault weapons, quote unquote assault weapons out here still floating in society. It's not going to go down like Australia. It's not going to go down like New Zealand. It's simply not. Again, America was founded through bloodshed. America had a standing army when this country was born. This is one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons why Canada doesn't have a Second Amendment. It's one of the reasons why Trudeau can just wave his magic wand and say these firearms are banned, because Canada did not fight for its freedom. Canada was gifted its freedom or independence through royal ascension. Go look it up. It was gifted its freedom because England didn't want another costly war, with any more of its colonies. Aside from the fact that that was embarrassing. How do you get your ass beat by one of your ragtag colonies? How the hell does that happen? Right? So they said, okay, Canada, we'll make a deal. And like I said before, Canada might as well be called the Canadian Islands because it's no different than the other British colonies all around the world. It's a commonwealth. You'll see this in the Caribbean. You saw this in South Africa. South Africa gained independence, but like Australia, New Zealand, the Cayman Islands, what other place? You got St. Kitts. You got there's tons of the Canadian islands. What is the other one? The Falkland Islands, I think there was, with the British versus Argentina. They fought over that little segment of islands. I'm saying you can look it on some map and you can find all of the is the Virgin Islands, are they British? Is the Virgin Islands British? I think the Virgin Islands is British. I could be wrong about that. I don't know all my countries, but I'm saying, if you ever traveled into the Caribbean, you'd see that, they got the Queen on the back of their money, and so, these are commonwealths. They're not, they're not truly independent. I mean, Canada didn't even write its constitution until 1982. That's when Canada wrote its constitution. You see, so they never truly have been. But that is the reason. That is the reason why, the Second Amendment exists in America versus not existing in Canada. Because, America fought for its freedom, Canada did not. And so, Yeah, this idea that, everybody's just going to, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. I'm like, that's not going to happen. We already know that's not going to happen. So what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with these pockets, these little blue pockets of, even the CCW app that I have on my phone. That's what you have. The coast, the Northeast and California, are, these may issue states, which may issue. The whole concept of may issue is bullshit. Again, if it pleases the crown, which was originally designed to deny guns to black people specifically, which is why I don't even understand why black people would even co-sign this. I don't even know why they would even co-sign this. So here you have a situation where black people feel threatened more than ever in America because of racial upheaval, right? And for those black people living in those blue states, you have an inability to go through the process, get vetted, get your background check, get your mental health check and everything else, and be issued a permit for your own personal self-defense. That's both from crazed white supremacists and Ray Ray and Pookie, and the criminals that exist in your own, low-income neighborhoods that do need to be challenged and confronted. So again, I'm just talking about the nuances of this whole situation, but God, is this shit terrible. This is terrible. But yeah, so the courts just, we'll leave it up to the voting and all that other shit, and we're not gonna say anything. So the only thing that's left is either move out of the state, or for everybody, which I already know is not going to happen, because black people don't value their Second Amendment rights like they should, is to vote for the party that will support your rights. I don't even understand what is the point. And that's my last point, but I don't even understand, like why does the Second Amendment even exist in these other states to begin with then? If the Supreme Court can't say what it is, it's like everybody else knows what the Second Amendment says, what it means, and what it is. Okay? You have the vast majority of states in the United States recognizing the importance of the Second Amendment, recognizing concealed carry. And you only have a small minority of states that pull this bullshit with, we respect the Second Amendment, but we're just going to restrict it into oblivion to where, it's effectively non-existent. Literally the equivalent of, you can borrow the car, but there's no gas in it. You see this with ammo restrictions and things. You can borrow the car, but there's no gas in it. They had 10 cases. They had assault weapons cases, whether assault weapons are a part of the Second Amendment, exercising of the Second Amendment. They had magazine restriction cases, whether reducing magazine capacities down to 10 rounds is legitimate. They had concealed carry, which is probably one of the most egregious violations, of that. Again, I like what Clarence Thomas said, where he said, he even used my terminology, talking about mental gymnastics, and he also pointed out, and he has a long dissent. It's long. I had to get my phone to read it to me. It was so damn long. But he talked about how, to say that, to keep and to bear means the same thing as the conflation of the highest order. That's like saying that red and maroon is the same thing. And notice it's only unidirectional, like meaning to keep means to keep, but to bear means to keep. To keep means to keep, but to bear, which means to carry, means to keep. That's how liberals interpret it. So why would you have that sort of redundancy in the Constitution? to keep and bear arms. Why would you have the and if it didn't have a separate meaning? Why not just say to keep and to keep, right? The right to keep and to keep arms. It makes no sense. But again, this is the liberal interpretation, which I have to remind everybody came out of racist gun control laws to keep guns out of the hands of the niggas, to keep guns out of the hands of black people, freed slaves, because white people were fearful that black people would do unto them as they had done unto black people, that black people would go out here and do what Nat Turner did. And that's always been their biggest fear. And that's always been the driving force in the system of white supremacy, that if black people somehow got on top, that we would do unto white people as white people have done unto us. And that's where these gun laws come from, because they weren't even applied to white people, even when white people broke the law. It's just on paper. But the way that it was exercised was to effectively disenfranchise black people, not white people. I mean, you saw this with poll tax. They would create poll taxes, but they would only apply the poll tax to who? Black people. And the sheer irony of it all is, here you have a black man, right? That everybody, all the black people in the black community would jump up and say he's a coon. Oh, Clarence Thomas is a coon. He's a coon. And he is the only one defending, black people's rights to access to firearms. He's the only one up there challenging it. Because if it was up to these white liberals, you wouldn't be able to defend yourself. And we already know how ineffective gun control is when we look at, the crime rates in the black community, with Ray Ray and Pookie running around and all that other stuff. So as a black person, as African American, you're just asked out. I mean, it's just mind boggling. White people created gun control, passed gun control in order to keep guns out of the hands of black people. And here you have a black Supreme Court justice who is the only one that has the balls to, speak on, how, the Supreme Court is not doing its job. This is coming from a black man. I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? And then you have, all the white conservatives that have their views about black people, but it is the black man who is the one that is essentially defending their rights, right? Obviously, black people's included, because I'm just going back and forth interchangeably, to signify the importance to specific groups. The Second Amendment is just as important to us as it is to white folks, but we don't seem to get that. And the white folks completely ignore that the main person up there that's defending their rights is a black man. And you would think that there would be some sort of spillover where they would have respect for black people, but no, they don't. I mean, it's like, even when it comes to Ginsburg, I look at Ginsburg with a side eye. When I look at what happened to her people, and you would think that what happened to her people, and the only reason I'm not saying it is because, YouTube algorithms, but the J people, and what happened to them, historically speaking, you would think that they would be the most staunch Second Amendment advocates ever. But no, she's up there anti-gun. And maybe it's because they have an ability as a group of people to affect things in different ways, because of, arguably what they control with banks and the media machine and all that other stuff. They have other avenues to make sure that they stay protected. Black people, you don't have that. You don't have that. So you need to be strong advocates for the Second Amendment. Even with Justice, Scalia, who passed away, and who was very pro Second Amendment, along with Clarence Thomas. I mean, you're talking about a man who has an Italian background. The first gun control New York, the New York laws, the gun control New York laws was not actually enacted against black people. It was enacted against immigrants, namely Italians. Okay, y'all remember the whole, Sacco and Vanzetti, right? And how they were treated. So these gun laws were enacted against Italians. And so here you got Scalia, who was an Italian American, and he's pro Second Amendment. You got Clarence Thomas, right? African American, pro Second Amendment, right? These are two groups of people that were, discriminated against, at the turn of the 19th century, heavily discriminated against, right? And then you got Ginsburg, and I'm looking at her like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing? You need to be over there with them. Do you not know your own history? It completely goes over her head, And again, there are many J people who are pro Second Amendment. There's one in North Jersey. You can find his channel on YouTube, but he has a video where he talks. He's got the star with the star of D. Since again you can't say it because of YouTube algorithms. And them being like a sacred cow. But anyway, the star with the D, and it's got the the firearms on it. It's like a seal, right? And they want to be able to protect themselves, right? You had that shootout at the supermarket in North Jersey, and the perpetrator was black. I don't co-sign that, right? But I'm all for anybody being able to protect themselves from anybody. This is a fundamental human right. And again, the court has failed at defending that right. So I'm like, well, I don't know where it goes from here. I really don't. I really, really don't. I mean, you're talking 10 years since the Heller and McDonald rulings. So what, you gotta wait another 10 years? You see what I'm saying? I mean, I've sat and watched changes be made to Chicago. I've sat and watched changes be made to DC, and then all of a sudden it stops. That's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. Now there's nothing left on the table but a bunch of confusion and no confidence. And like I said, you already know what that opens up the door to in terms of the what's the word that I'm looking for? In terms of the legitimacy of the state. You got 3 branches of government now that are ineffective, that don't do their job. 3 branches of government. If you ask me, America's on the decline. It's on its way out. Russia's over there like, yes. Anyway, that's all I got to say. New Jersey self-defense out.